Incredible moment revealed. Single dad's bag search exposed a hidden truth that frozen the room. Jonah's heart raced as he dug through the worn fabric of his backpack, the faint smell of old pizza drifting from yesterday's forgotten lunch. He could already hear the chatter from the other parents in the room fading into the background. Tonight was critical. It was a parenting workshop aimed at bridging the distance between him and his spirited 8-year-old son, Max. His fingers raked through crumpled receipts and half-eaten granola bars, the weight of his responsibilities pressing down on his chest. Bedtime stories felt like a distant dream lately, overshadowed by the insistent cacophony of bills, delivery routes, and endless shifts at the warehouse. Just as the session was about to kick off, he remembered the folder, his lifeline to becoming the dad he knew Max deserved. But it was nowhere to be found. Panic sparked, reverberating in his mind. He threw aside a tattered napkin, his anxiety morphing into desperation. Then, his fingers grazed the hard edge of something unfamiliar. Curious, he pulled out an old family photo, its corners frayed and lightly dusted. The image unveiled a vibrant moment in his father's life, standing proudly outside his once thriving business, a stark contrast to the shadows Jonah had grown up navigating. Memories barreled through him like a freight train, soft laughter colored by the whispers of his father's disgrace, murmurs about bad decisions, lost fortunes. As he flipped the photo over, his hands trembled. The unveiling of a newspaper clipping, yellowed with age, caught him completely off guard. Local businessmen wrongly accused in scandal, it read, anger prickling under his skin. Jonah's mind swirled violently, questions and uncertainty spiraling. Did he misjudge the man who had been the center of his childhood world? Fear seized him, a tight knot in his stomach. This truth, if it could breathe, might just unravel every belief he'd held tight. His father, the failure he'd been taught to see, now appeared not as a burden, but as a victim of betrayal. Rage simmered just below his surface, the inherited shame tangled his thoughts. As silence enveloped the workshop, the atmosphere shifted. Jonah felt the collective attention of the other parents eclipsing his internal monologue. They sensed his unease, their own stories mirrored in his apprehension, their histories wrapping around him like an embrace. He could almost feel each of their struggles reading into the depths of his turmoil. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A heavy breath steadied Jonah's racing heart, but the anguish surged anew, clawing at the corners of his resolve. Confronting this legacy, the guilt he bore for a truth he had not yet claimed, was an impossible task. In that moment, he stood, teetering on the precipice of a life-altering choice. Would he risk the delicate threads of his family history for a truth that could redefine everything? The room pulsed with tension, eyes flashing with empathy, longing for resolution. But Jonah, lost in the cauldron of contradiction, couldn't decide if he was ready to face the truth about his father or about himself. Jonah's breath caught painfully in his throat, teetering between liberation and despair. Each second amplified the weight of his thoughts. The echoes of past shame clawed at him, eager to smother the sliver of hope beckoning through the darkness. Would he emerge unscathed or suffocated beneath the burdens that history had entrusted upon him? Each heartbeat drummed louder, underscoring the urgency of his choice as the room waited, anticipating the rise or fall of a single voice. His voice shattered through the silence, surprising even himself. Maybe it's not just about what happened to my father, Jonah began, his words spilling out with unexpected fervor. Maybe it's about how that story has shaped who I am today. The murmurs around him faded as he opened the door to the memories he had long tucked away. Jonah's heart pounded as he navigated this uncharted territory. Every lingering sense of shame he had carried for years felt lighter, almost buoyant, in this moment of release. This was his truth, but more importantly, it was a catalyst for change. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the other parents. They didn't see a man unraveling, they saw someone taking ownership. In their expressions, Jonah recognized the hesitation, the fear of revealing one's own vulnerabilities. He had become a mirror, reflecting their hidden struggles. He straightened his back, willing himself to fully engage. I've always believed my dad was a failure, someone to avoid becoming. But what if he wasn't? What if his struggles were a part of the larger picture? The murmurs turned to silence again, thickening the air. Jonah felt his pulse race in response to their rapt attention. A spark of clarity ignited within him, reigniting hope that had flickered out long ago. He thought of Max, his laughter, his boundless spirit. What would his son think if he saw his father grappling with such weighty truths? Jonah's resolve hardened. He would not allow his father's mistakes to cast a shadow over his own future or his son's. The realization hit him like a tidal wave. He was harboring the kind of resilience it took to rise from pain, to assert himself beyond history's constraints. He envisioned sharing this newfound perspective with Max, teaching him that mistakes could serve as powerful lessons rather than heartbreaks to carry. What if he could turn his own pain into a narrative of strength and growth? He felt the familiarity of the workshop's room deteriorate as he looked outside, imagining his father outside his old warehouse, standing proud. The contradiction of manhood was evident, failure and success intertwined. Jonah had a chance to redefine what legacy meant, and it started now, with him. Tonight isn't just about parenting, he continued, his voice gaining strength. It's about breaking cycles. I want to be the kind of father that sees potential in moments of darkness, not just for my son but for myself. If my dad faced scandal, and I can walk through shame, I can teach Max to hold his head high. We can rise together. The room remained quiet, but it was a quiet filled with expectation, ignited by Jonah's passion. He had just opened a door, and he sensed a shift among the other parents, the beginnings of their own contemplations taking root. Perhaps they too could disentangle their own stories from inherited fears. As the session wrapped up, Jonah felt a blend of exhaustion and invigoration course through him. Each breath was wreathed in possibility, a fresh horizon stretching ahead. Was this the new identity he could step into? A father who embraces vulnerability while teaching the strength of personal growth? With every intention to connect deeper with Max, Jonah's determination surged. He had learned something vital this evening. His father's legacy wouldn't chain him, it could empower him. He found himself lingering in the room as other parents filtered out, wanting to share his new realization and inspire others. Stepping toward the exit, Jonah spotted a fellow parent, an unassuming man who had often blended into the background. Their eyes locked as if silently acknowledging the weight of their respective truths. And just like that, faced with an opportunity to forge a new connection, Jonah stepped forward. Can we talk? He asked, the tremor in his voice betraying the storm still stirring inside him. The moment of truth arrived. Jonah watched the other parent's eyes widen, a silent mixture of surprise and curiosity unfolding across his features. The man hesitated, his body instinctively pulling back as if Jonah's request had physically grasped him. But then something changed. His brow relaxed, and a hint of a smile broke through the uncertainty. Sure, I'd like that, he replied, and together they stepped into the hallway, the muffled sounds of the ongoing group fading into the background. What's your name? Jonah asked, striving to establish a bridge between them. Eli, the man answered, glancing down at his shoes, a slight nervousness still evident in his body language. Jonah felt an echo of his own past self in Eli's demeanor, a gentle reminder of the barriers one should strip bare to achieve true connection. I felt really compelled by what you shared in there, Eli admitted, leaning against the wall as if searching for support. It struck a chord. I've been wrestling with a lot of what you said. My father, he was never there, you know. He had his own demons. Jonah felt a profound empathy bubbling within him. I understand that pain. You don't want to become a reflection of what you know, but it's hard when that fear is deep-rooted. Eli's shoulders relaxed as they continued to share their stories. Jonah discovered that Eli had a son, too, a boy just 2 years younger than Max. The weight of their shared experiences lightened the air around them, both men recognizing how the burden of parental disappointment had shaped their lives. You want to break that cycle, right? Jonah prompted, his eyes searching Eli's. Yeah, Eli said, nodding slowly. But it's like I'm stuck in this loop. I tell myself that my father's abandonment won't define me, yet I find myself repeating some of his mistakes. At that moment, Jonah considered Eli's words carefully. The loathsome irony that fathers could be their own worst chains became clear. Maybe it wasn't solely about breaking the chains of their pasts but also about redefining what a father ought to be in order to embrace a new identity. What if we hold each other accountable? Jonah proposed, words flowing from a rich well of enthusiasm. We can check in, share our struggles, and remind each other of what we want for our boys. It's hard to keep that in focus without support. Eli's brow furrowed slightly. You think that kind of accountability would work? It has to start somewhere, Jonah insisted, feeling a flicker of strength. We both had to face our truths. Why not turn them into a resource for something greater? We can help each other become the fathers we wish we had. Echoing compassion sparked in Eli's eyes. Yeah, maybe you're right. I want to give my boy a different life than the one I had. But it's daunting to think of facing it all alone. Jonah took a step closer, feeling the encroaching weight of commitment. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. We grow together through transparency and honesty. As they exchanged numbers, a sense of solidarity enveloped him. Jonah could feel new possibilities unfolding, forging a path not only for himself but for both their sons. The exhilaration of accountability ignited a passion he had long yearned to express. They bid farewell, each man with a fresh resolve to confront their fears and activism in fatherhood. Jonah climbed into his car, heart thundering with an unrecognizable eagerness. But as he turned the key in the ignition, a nagging thought crept in: what if he couldn't remain as steadfast as he hoped? What if the past came rushing back when he least expected it? Glancing out the window, Jonah's vision was met with the image of his father's old warehouse. It stood distant yet looming, a stark reminder of the complexities he had yet to untangle. The evening's revelations doused him with a heightened sense of urgency. In that moment, Jonah understood something. Navigating the darkness of his legacy would require more than just intent. It demanded a relentless pursuit of self-awareness and resilience. As he drove back home, patience battled urgency within him. He needed to discuss not just his new relationship with Eli but also to prepare Max for the complexities of their family history as well. The road stretched ahead, and Jonah felt an emerging tension, not fear, but a realization that the real work lay ahead. He pulled into the driveway, a flurry of emotions swirling within him as he understood his journey was just beginning. The next conversation would be a pivotal step, testing the very limits of his commitment. Could he convey the courage it took to rise from the shadows? As Jonah stepped out of the car, the weight of his thoughts felt almost unbearable. The front porch creaked beneath him, echoing the doubt that crept into his mind. What if he faltered in the conversation he had planned with Max? Could he communicate the importance of confronting their family history without overwhelming his son? The image of his father's old warehouse loomed ominously in his memory, a physical manifestation of a past Jonah had fought to escape. Inside the house, the familiar sounds of Max playing with his toys filled the air. Jonah's heart swelled with affection, yet the excitement was laced with trepidation. Today, everything felt significant, everything felt as if it would shape both their futures. He took a moment to breathe, steadied himself, and walked toward the living room. "Hey, buddy," Jonah announced, forcing a brightness into his voice. He observed Max, who was totally engrossed in a game, completely oblivious to the undercurrents of purpose swirling around Jonah. But Jonah was determined to break through, not just for Max's sake, but to solidify his own development as a father. "Dad! Look, I built a superhero fort," Max exclaimed, pointing enthusiastically at the scattered cushions and blankets. Jonah smiled, genuine this time, and knelt beside him. "That's pretty amazing. Can I join you in your superhero adventures?" "Yeah." Max chuckled, dragging his father into the disarray. As they laughed, Jonah felt a flicker of the joy he had long feared was stifled by his past. But amidst the laughter, Jonah's mind wrestled with the threads of their history. He needed to weave a narrative that would not only inform Max about his lineage but also empower him to forge a different path. Max, Jonah began cautiously, the playful tone shifting as he searched for the right words. Can we talk about something important? Max's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. He could sense the shift, and Jonah watched his son's confusion flicker across his face. What is it? With a deep breath, Jonah engaged the moment head-on. You know how we talk about being brave? How superheroes are defined by their choices. Uh-huh. Max nodded, eyebrows raised. Jonah steeled himself. Sometimes, in life, there are things we need to share that make us stronger. It's okay to be scared. I'd like to share a part of my history, a part of us, you know? Max's big brown eyes widened with curiosity and just a hint of apprehension. Jonah could feel the tension thickening in the air, yet he pressed on, inspired by the conversation he had shared with Eli. Your grandpa, my dad, wasn't he always there for me? He began, watching closely for any signs of fear or sadness. As Jonah continued, he felt a revelation dawning within him, a sense of liberation that had been stifled for years. Sharing these truths was not just about imparting history, it was about stripping away the shame associated with it, lightening the burden for both him and his son. Each word felt like a step toward healing the wounds that had been passed down from generation to generation. Max listened intently, absorbing the information. Jonah watched him process, noticing the way his brows knitted together in concentration. There it was, the turning point, the moment that would define their relationship moving forward. Jonah hoped to instill resilience and understanding, guiding Max not to fear or repeat the patterns of the past. Just as Jonah began to feel hopeful, he noticed a shift in Max's demeanor. The young boy's gaze fell to the floor, betraying an unexpected heaviness. Jonah felt a swell of concern rise within him, countering the optimism that had briefly surfaced. What's wrong, buddy? Jonah asked softly, positioning himself to be more eye-to-eye with Max. I don't want to be like your dad, Max muttered. What if I mess up too? Panic surged through Jonah, the fear of repeating history igniting once again. Yet, instead of retreating into his uncertainties, he reached deep within himself, determined to offer reassurance. Max, it's okay to be afraid. We all have to face our fears. But you won't mess up. You're already learning. Together, we'll break those chains. Jonah's words hung in the air, pregnant with emotion. This was the moment he needed, not only to reassure his son but to solidify his commitment to personal growth. Yet, behind the sincerity of his reassurance lay a shadow of doubt. Could they really overcome their legacies, or would history repeat itself? The clock ticked in the background, each second amplifying the tension. Jonah's pulse quickened as he realized this was just the beginning of a much more profound exploration of identity and accountability. The complexity of their journey loomed larger than ever. What had he truly unlocked within them? Would the revelations provide the strength they both needed to confront what lay ahead? Jonah steeled his resolve, ready to navigate the depths of their shared legacies together with Max. But somewhere in his mind, the echoes of caution persisted. Would they emerge as conquerors of their pasts, or would the breaching of these truths expose wounds deep enough to sow doubt in their progress? Jonah's heart raced as he observed Max's somber expression. The bond they were trying to strengthen now felt fragile, like glass teetering on a precipice. He searched for the right words, feeling the weight of his own uncertainties mix with that of his son's. Listen, Max, Jonah began, keeping his voice steady, I want you to know that we all make mistakes. It's part of being human. What matters is what we do next. Your grandpa's story, my story, it's about facing those mistakes, learning from them. Just like superheroes. Max looked up, the flicker of hope in his eyes battling against the shadows of doubt. But how do I know I won't mess up like he did? Jonah considered his son's question. This wasn't just about his father's past, it was about shaping Max's future. You have something that I didn't have. You have the knowledge that we can learn from hurt. You know how to be better, and that's your superpower. The love we share, it's what will guide you. Max nodded slowly, absorbing his father's words, the tension in the air beginning to ease. Jonah allowed himself a small breath of relief, the encouragement reigniting the spark within him. It was a realization that their journey could redefine not just their story, but the narratives they had both internalized. Feeling a surge of determination, Jonah decided it was time to shed more light on their family history. "Can I tell you a story about me? It's not all easy, but it's important." Jonah leaned closer, the superhero fort now a backdrop for their deeper connection. "When I was your age, there were days I felt lost, like I didn't know who I was or who I wanted to be. I was scared, just like you. My dad, he made choices that hurt our family. But I promised myself that my story wouldn't end the same way." As he spoke, Jonah noticed a change in Max. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly. Each word was a thread weaving their narratives together. "You see, every time I faced a mistake, I learned something. Every fear I confronted made me stronger." Max's eyes locked onto Jonah, brimming with uncertainty, yet flickering with resolve. "What if I have to face something really scary?" Jonah felt a chill run down his spine at the thought, a reminder that fear was not just a concept but a living entity that manifests in various forms. "You will, buddy. And when you do, I'll be right here with you. We'll face those moments together." The notion of standing alongside his son in the face of adversity became a turning point for Jonah. It reframed their struggle from an isolated battle into a shared commitment. The walls he had built began to crumble under the weight of this new perspective. Max's transformation began to unfold before him. The boy's spirit seemed to brighten, filled with renewed determination, and Jonah realized they were not just discussing their challenges but actively laying the groundwork for a united front against the past. As their conversation wound down, Jonah felt an urgency beneath his newfound strength. What other layers of pain and revelation had they yet to uncover? Could their honesty forge a path to healing, or would they be confronted by even harsher truths lurking in the background? With the air heavy with contemplation, Jonah understood this wasn't just a moment of sharing, it was a catalyst for lasting change. He drew strength from the connection they were building. "Max," he said, his voice firm yet tender, "this journey is just the beginning. There's much more we need to explore about our past, about ourselves." Max's expression flickered with curiosity, the earlier heaviness replaced by a glimmer of excitement. "What is it, Dad?" Jonah paused, a realization dawning on him that he had opened a door neither of them could close. They would need to delve deeper into their family legacy, even if it was fraught with heartache. As they sat amid the cushions and blankets of the superhero fort, Jonah prepared to guide them further down a path laden with revelations and challenges. The journey ahead was uncertain, but they would not face it alone. "Next, we'll need to talk about my mother. There's something I haven't shared." A wave of anxiety washed over him as he felt the gravity of his words. What awaited them in those memories? And how would it forever change the bond they were forging? The weight of Jonah's revelation hung heavily in the air, a palpable tension that coiled around them like a thick fog. He searched his son's face for a flicker of readiness, but all he saw was apprehension. Jonah took a deep breath, steeling himself for the stories that had shaped his life and now threatened to once again intertwine them. "Max," he began, his voice steadier than he felt, "my mother, she was a complicated person. Just like everyone else, she had her struggles. When I was growing up, it often felt like her pain was larger than our family." He paused, wanting to gauge Max's reaction to this admission. The boy shifted, clearly engaged yet wary, an embodiment of innocence colliding with the harsh truths of life. Jonah recalled the nights spent in silence, the tension palpable, waiting for his mother's emotional storms to pass. "There were times when I felt invisible, like I had to navigate around her confusion and sadness. I promised myself to be different, that when I had a family of my own, I would make sure my kids felt seen." Max's brow furrowed. "Did it make you sad?" he asked, bravely seeking clarity within the shadows of Jonah's past. "It did," Jonah admitted, the words spilling from his lips like molten metal. "But those experiences also made me determined. I learned to confront feelings instead of avoiding them. I learned how to be vulnerable, how to communicate. It became my mission to create a space filled with love and understanding." Despite his intentions, Jonah couldn't shake the clenching sensation deep in his gut. Was he sharing too much too soon? Would it frighten Max away from engaging in the deeper conversations he hoped would strengthen their bond? Cautiously, Jonah continued. My past taught me how not to be. It showed me the importance of facing my fears head-on. And now, sharing it with you, it feels like a step toward breaking our cycle. Max leaned in, curiosity etched in his expression. But Dad, how do I learn from your mistakes? What if I still mess up? Jonah felt another wave of tension. The heartfelt exchange between them anchored him, yet it also illuminated his own insecurities. You won't get it right all the time. Nobody does. I still stumble. But that's why we need to keep talking. It hit him this wasn't merely about his mother's struggles, it was an invitation for both of them to redefine their narrative together. Jonah remembered why vulnerability had attracted him to those around him. It fostered connections and allowed for growth amidst imperfections. He placed his hand on Max's shoulder, an anchor amidst swirling uncertain emotions. We're in this together. The most important part is being open and honest, even when it scares us. Max's eyes searched Jonah's for reassurance, and at that moment, Jonah saw a mirror of his own youthful self, the same curiosity, the same fear of falling into a cycle of hurt. Would opening these floodgates lead them to knowledge or only deeper wounds? As if sensing the shift in energy, Max asked, what was she like? His voice was soft, almost reverent, drawing Jonah into a memory that threatened to overwhelm him. She was fierce, he replied, memories bursting forth. Passionate about her dreams, sometimes too passionate. It made her beautiful, but it also made her unstable. I watched her chase happiness, only to find sadness lurking around every corner. I don't want you to think she was a villain, she was just trapped in her own battles. Jonah's heart sank. He wondered if he was romanticizing the difficult truths that lay in those recollections. Was this exploration a means to exonerate her, or was he simply allowing his own fears to resurface? In the superhero fort, the tension transformed. It wasn't just about Jonah's childhood, it was becoming a bridge to Max's understanding. Both son and father were threading their fears and hopes into a shared narrative, forming a tapestry rich in texture and vulnerability. What do we do next? Max finally asked, a determined glint returning to his eyes. Jonah felt a surge of pride. Max was asking the right questions. Next, we need to talk openly, to delve into how we each handle our fears and doubts. It's not just about sharing stories, it's about creating strategies for ourselves. As they sat together, something fundamental shifted. It was no longer just a retrospective on the past. This was a confrontation of their collective fears and a bold step toward redefining their future. Ready? Jonah asked, and he felt the weight of impending challenges ahead. Nothing was guaranteed, nothing was simple. Yes, Max nodded. And with that simple affirmation, Jonah knew they were about to embark on another layer of their journey, one that would test the very fabric of their bond, leading them toward a revelation neither could escape. Let us discuss how we overcome those fears of ours, especially the one I still grapple with, confronting my mistakes head-on, Jonah said, aware of the gravity of what they were stepping into. As Max nodded, Jonah felt the awareness creeping in that this wasn't merely a conversation, but a pivotal moment. What had he yet to confront? And how would Max respond to the complexities that lay ahead? Jonah inhaled deeply, the air heavy with both anticipation and trepidation. This was the moment he had envisioned ever since he decided to engage with his son on a level that reached beyond the surface. Max's eager face bore witness to the trust he was willing to extend. Jonah was grateful but anxious, the stakes had never felt higher. What do you think your biggest fear is, Max? He asked, trying to frame the conversation with an open question. He wanted Max to think critically about his own vulnerabilities, much like Jonah had to do in silence for years. Max deliberated for a moment. I guess I worry about disappointing you, he admitted, his voice trembling slightly. Like if I mess up, you won't want to be around me anymore. Jonah's chest tightened. The fear of disappointing his own child felt all too familiar, resonating deeply with his past. You're not going to disappoint me, he said softly, but strong. Mistakes are part of learning. It's how we grow. Really? Max questioned, skepticism edging into his tone. Absolutely, Jonah affirmed. The resolve in his own voice strengthened him as he thought about how he had let the shadow of parental disappointment loom over him for so long. I can't speak for all parents, but I'm here to support you even when things get tough. You've got to trust that. The room seemed to shift slightly as Jonah dared to expose more of himself. I still struggle with that fear too. Sometimes, I feel like I'll fail you or let myself down because of my past. I worry it will seep into our relationship and make it fragile. Max's brows furrowed. But Dad, if you know that's a fear, then how do you stop it from happening? Jonah paused, replaying the intricacies of the plan he had developed within himself but never voiced. I have to actively work on it, acknowledge it, and I think that's a strategy we can both use. If I keep avoiding my mistakes or pretending they don't exist, they'll only fester. I need to confront them. Like how your mom dealt with her problems? Max probed, genuine curiosity surfacing again. Jonah felt an uncomfortable slice of recognition. Exactly. Watching her made me realize that confronting wasn't just about owning mistakes, it was about integrating them into who I am, understanding how they shaped me, and growing from that. As Jonah spoke, a flicker of inspiration ignited within him. Perhaps this was the pivotal moment he had longed for, the raw honesty that could change the course of their relationship. He was not only offering emotional transparency but embedding a lesson in resilience that Max could carry forward. What if we made a list together? Jonah suggested spontaneously. We can write down our fears and the mistakes that haunt us. Then, we can confront them one by one, and talk about how we can learn from each. Max's face lit up at the idea, eyes gleaming with enthusiasm. That sounds kind of amazing. Can we actually do that? Yes, right now. Jonah reached for a nearby notebook and pen, quickly jotting their fears down on the page. The act of writing felt cathartic, as if both of them were shedding weights from their shoulders collectively. As they wrote, Jonah's mind churned with unacknowledged worries, the nagging suspicion that perhaps the secrets he harbored about his mother's struggles would loom larger in Max's mind than even the tangible issues they wrote about. The weight of unaddressed feelings could shift their budding dialogue from empowerment to uncertainty. Finally, he shared his biggest fear aloud. I worry that I'll become like her, that I'll make the same mistakes and pass them on to you, trapping you in a cycle of pain. He looked at Max, gauging his reaction. The boy considered Jonah's words carefully, then replied, but if we keep talking like this, I think you'll be okay. We can help each other. Jonah nodded, pride swelling within him. His son's confidence reinforced his commitment to transparency. If they could keep this line of communication open, perhaps they could shield each other from similar pitfalls. With each line they wrote, the page filled not just with fears but with a burgeoning resolve. They were not bound by their pasts but were armed with their mutual understanding and support. Jonah felt a surge of optimism, but shadows of doubt still threatened to creep in. What happens when we have to confront those fears? He ventured, the question stark against the hopeful atmosphere. Max paused, thinking seriously before answering. I guess that's when we'll need to have our strategies ready. Jonah's heart raced, realizing how crucial this next step would be. He had pushed open a door, and once they stepped through it, there would be no turning back. As they added the final notes, a sense of urgency balled inside Jonah's chest. There was much to unpack about his past. Bitter truths awaited them. And what if we find something that's really hard to talk about? Max hesitated, eyes widening slightly. Then I guess it means we fight through it. Together. Jonah grasped tightly onto his pen, aware that the upcoming discussions would probe deeper than ever before. He felt the duality of dread and anticipation. They were standing on the brink of confronting something profound, perhaps even transformational. Yet the most pressing question lingered, echoing in his mind. What hidden truths were still lurking in his memories, threatening to emerge and challenge everything they had built so far? The sun dipped low outside the window, casting elongated shadows across the table as Jonah and Max focused on the list that had transformed their evening. Fear had shifted into a realm of strategy, yet Jonah sensed it was only the beginning of a deeper journey. The notebook lay open between them, filled with scrawls and doodles that inexplicably tied them closer. "I think we should start with the smallest fears first," Max proposed, his youthful tone pondering the weight of adulthood. "That way, when we tackle the big stuff, we'll feel more equipped." Jonah glanced at his son, marveling at his grounded sense of wisdom. "Good strategy, buddy. Facing smaller fears first can help build momentum. It might even expose the connections to bigger issues down the line." He paused, further enveloped by thoughts about the impact of both fear and anticipation. He could feel a tension building within himself, not just the fear of confronting his past but uncertainty over what it meant for Max's future. Would revealing his own vulnerabilities inspire Max, or would it impose a burdensome legacy he had struggled against all his life? "Let us start with this one," Jonah said, tapping the list where they had written down Max's fear of disappointing him. Max shifted in his seat, his brow furrowing in thought. "So, how do we confront it? I mean, like really face it head on?" "I suppose we need to challenge the belief that any mistake is a form of failure," Jonah responded, grappling with how to frame it. "Mistakes only become failures if you let them define you. Think of every mistake as a lesson rather than an ending." Max nodded, absorbing his father's words. Jonah watched as Max's fingers traced along the page. Each artifact of thought, each fear lumped together like heavy stones. Did he truly believe that confronting these fears would set them free? Jonah wasn't sure. They continued with the exercise. Max hesitantly expressed how his fear of not performing well in school often left him paralyzed when test days approached. Jonah recalled fighting similar feelings of inadequacy throughout his own educational journey. Would his experience be enough? What about performance pressure, then? Jonah queried. How can we shift our perspective to see it differently? Max gazed at the ceiling, lost in consideration. Maybe if I think of it as an opportunity to show what I know? And if I don't know it all, then it doesn't mean I'm failing? Just still learning? Exactly, Jonah affirmed. It's about redefining the benchmark we hold ourselves to. See it as part of growth, as opposed to some kind of ultimatum. With each dialogue, energies shifted from fear into understanding. Jonah felt lighter, though deeper apprehensions lurked under the surface. Now the challenge was becoming tangible: how best to embrace ongoing discussions of their shared fears. Each thought that flowed from one to the other felt like laying bricks in a wall of protective support. Yet, Jonah's heart tugged at him. It was easy to speak about learning with Max when he himself hadn't yet learned to master his fears. As Max excitedly added, "Let us dive into the next one." Jonah felt an internal tremor course through him. What next? He mentally prepared for fears that had far different implications, like those swirling feelings regarding his mother and her struggles, memories he had buried beneath layers of denial and shame. "All right, let us move on," Jonah said with conviction, masking his internal turmoil. "What do we have next?" But as they turned the page, a photograph slipped from the midst of the notebook, a fragile remnant of Jonah's hidden past. It landed softly on the table. The image didn't just bring up memories, it beckoned an urgency Jonah had diligently avoided, the deeper truths that begged to surface. Max picked up the photo, excitement in his eyes quickly turning into concern. "Dad, who's this? Why didn't you ever mention her?" Jonah felt the air leaving his lungs. The weight of the past now felt insurmountable. How to explain without bringing gloom to their journey of mutual support? The road had become unexpectedly narrow. What if we talked about this? Jonah's voice was barely a whisper, but the living room felt suddenly colder, the invisible divide between past and present surging forward, forcing him to confront not just his own fears but the looming shadows over his son's future. Could he muster the courage to reveal the truth wrapped inside that photo? The time had come to face what he had hidden for so long. Jonah remained immobilized, an anxiety that felt both suffocating and familiar settling in. His son's innocent probing stirred deep-rooted fears he had buried in the recesses of his mind, too scared to rattle the fragile framework of his own emotional stability. "Dad?" Max's voice pierced through the tension, the photo still grasped tightly in his hand. "Seriously, who is she?" He glanced at the photograph, a faded image of a woman enveloped by an overwhelming sense of nostalgia. She was smiling, her laughter seemingly frozen in time, a stark contrast to the memories Jonah had chained to that image. The fear of judgment loomed closer, like shadows creeping in on a twilight afternoon. Would revealing the truth bring him relief, or would it splinter the protective world he had forged for Max? "Okay, let us talk about it," Jonah said, hearing the tremor in his own voice. Each word felt like stepping closer to a precipice he wasn't sure he would survive. "This was my mother, your grandmother." Max's brow furrowed further. "But why didn't you?" "Because it's complicated," he interrupted, trying to catch his breath. "She struggled with a lot of things we don't understand." Jonah's own memories began to swirl vividly, the long days of uncertainty, the anxiety that gnawed at him as a child, always walking on eggshells around his mother's moods. Those emotions were now ripping through him anew. How could he explain to Max that revealing these truths might stiffen the bond he sought to create? "So she was sick?" Max inquired, his voice softer now, full of an empathy that made Jonah's heart ache. "In many ways, yes." Jonah took a deep breath, readying his mind for the challenge ahead. "But it's not just about being sick. Sometimes, it's about how we handle our fears and how those fears shape us. I thought hiding them would protect you." "What do you mean?" Max leaned in closer, his interest piqued. "I was afraid that if you knew what she went through, you'd see me differently. Maybe even think I'd be like her." Jonah directed his gaze away, unwilling to allow Max's wide eyes to penetrate his defenses. As he withdrew deeper into his mind, he felt himself unraveling. "The truth is, I am still fighting my own battles every day. And I don't want them to spill over onto you." Max considered this for a moment, his young eyes searching for understanding amid Jonah's tumult. "But Dad, that doesn't make you her. You've done so much to help me." The sincerity in Max's tone struck Jonah deeply, a ripple of gratitude brushing against the walls he had built. "Thanks, kid," Jonah whispered, feeling a fragile connection crack open between them. However, the battle within him raged on, bearing the churning tides of guilt and fear. Jonah knew that moving forward meant revealing more of himself, and he had been wallowing in the shadows for too long. Yet, absorbing Max's faith in him pushed him further down the vulnerable path. It was time to confront the truth that had been suppressed for years. "What if we look at it this way?" Jonah began, feeling the tension in his chest ease as he spoke. "This journey into our fears isn't just about what they are. It's also about learning from them. No more hiding." Even as he spoke, a chilling realization struck him. What if, by stepping into the light, he inadvertently exposed Max to vulnerabilities that could reshape their relationship in ways he could not foresee? That thought hung heavily in the air, threatening to tether Jonah to his decision. As Max's innocent optimism met the raw truth of Jonah's fears, the lingering question hovered between them: could they bravely face not only the past but what lay ahead together? "Let us continue," Jonah said, a sense of determination mingling with uncertainty. "What else is on that list?" But as the words left his lips, a fresh wave of dread washed over him. This journey would demand more than he had ever anticipated, and soon, they may stumble upon a reality that neither could prepare for. Would they find strength in their shared vulnerabilities, or would it tear them apart? As Max peeled back the next layer of fears, Jonah steeled himself for the unknown depths yet to be uncovered. The turning point had arrived, but where would it lead? The evening wore on as the shadows of doubt and vulnerability intertwined with the flickering light of hope in Jonah's living room. He felt an urgency to delve deeper, to maintain the momentum going. The realization that honesty fostered connection echoed in his mind like a constant mantra. Max had already exceeded Jonah's expectations. His son was more insightful and resilient than Jonah had ever believed. "Let us tackle something a little bigger," Jonah suggested, sensing that the time had come to join Max in the challenging waters of their shared past. He deliberately turned the page of their notebook, revealing a lengthy list crafted from their fears. The gravity of what lay ahead brought tinges of apprehension, yet he also felt a growing determination to confront the truth together. "How about this one?" Max pointed to the phrase "fear of repeating mistakes." Jonah's heart quickened as he swallowed hard. I think we should both take turns sharing, Jonah proposed, knowing the gravity of this topic. What does that fear look like to you? Max's face contorted in thought. It feels like I'm stuck in a loop sometimes. Like, no matter how much I try, I might end up being just like my grandpa. The word struck Jonah like a bolt of lightning, illuminating a raw spot he had kept hidden for years. Buddy, Jonah began cautiously, ready to embrace the weight of this conversation with empathy. That's a tough fear, and it's completely understandable. But what you need to know is that nothing is predetermined. We have the power to choose our paths. Then how do I make sure I choose right? Max's eyes searched Jonah's, desperate for clarity. Their gaze locked, and Jonah recognized the pivotal moment they were sharing. The heart of their journey lay not just in revealing fears but in framing them with strength and choice. It's about understanding that each decision carries weight. You can choose courage or willingness to ask for help and learn from the challenges. Jonah felt his own resolve solidify. I promise you I won't let my past define your future. We'll make sure of that together. Max's youthful determination flickered, brightening the once ominous conversation. But what if it feels really hard? It will be hard at times, Jonah admitted, glancing toward the photo of his mother lying on the table, a reminder of the burdens carried through generations. We'll face it, but we'll also face it with honesty. The truth gives us the tools to navigate all of it. With a new sense of urgency, Jonah realized they were no longer just scratching the surface. They were actively weaving a narrative of resilience, empowered by vulnerability. Each revelation penned in the notebook was a bridge to healing, not just for Jonah, but for Max as well. Okay, Dad, Max said, a flicker of resolve emerging in his young voice. What about you? What is your biggest fear about making mistakes? Jonah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility mingling with courage. It's that I won't be good enough. Even when I try to be a good dad, sometimes I fear that I'll fall back on old habits. I fear I'll let my past dictate my present. The heaviness of his confession loomed over them, yet simultaneously fortified their connection. Max's response was immediate. I guess it's just about staying aware, right? Like if you always remind yourself who you want to be, you will choose wisely. Yes, Jonah affirmed, pride swelling in his heart. This isn't about perfection, it's about perseverance and progress. In that moment, Jonah felt an overwhelming sense of pride in Max's insight. The conversation had transitioned from a series of confessions into a productive strategy session. Every moment they shared was building towards something monumental. Can I ask something else, Dad? Max's tone had shifted again, this time layered with curiosity. Of course. What's on your mind? What if we mess up together? Like what happens then? Caught off guard, Jonah momentarily hesitated, the weight of the shared responsibility pressing on him. Then we'll address it together, he replied, attempting to ground his voice even as the ground beneath felt uncertain. We'll learn and grow as a team. When you commit to open communication, it creates space for understanding and resolution. A smile crept across Max's face, a rare glimmer of contentment grounding his youthful optimism. I'll remember that. You better, Jonah laughed gently, the tension lifting slightly even as the underlying truths of their past loomed ominously on the horizon. In tandem, the two continued to dissect fear after fear until the shadows receded into the background, replaced by a stronger understanding of each other, a flourishing bond that tethered them tightly. Can we make a pact? Max asked, excitement in his eyes. A pact? Jonah echoed, intrigued. Max nodded enthusiastically. Whenever one of us feels scared, we'll talk about it. No more hiding. Just like tonight. Deal, Jonah agreed, infused with relief and gratitude. They had taken a step toward not just healing but a commitment to further growth and accountability. Jonah knew the path ahead would remain uncertain, and some of their fears might play out despite their best intentions. However, a sense of newfound purpose invigorated him. They were moving together into uncharted territory, and he felt emboldened by the understanding that they would not face it alone. As their conversation wended toward closure, Jonah sensed the warmth of familial bonds enveloping them, a protective cocoon forged from the courage they exercised together. Tomorrow would inevitably bring new challenges, but Jonah knew they had laid down foundational stones upon which they could build a solid relationship capable of enduring the test of time. With each word, each shared vulnerability, Jonah had not only discovered a renewed confidence but a sense of purpose. He was now equipped to be the father Max needed. This newfound clarity had settled like dust from an unsettled storm, and he could finally see the sunlight piercing through. Stepping outside those suffocating shadows would require commitment, but they were ready together. In that moment, Jonah was not just overcoming struggles, he was actively shaping a legacy rooted in resilience, love, and deeply trusted communication. They would redefine their futures, beginning with this very night, forever altering the trajectory of their relationship. Jonah stood tall in his renewed sense of purpose, pride swelling as he turned to Max. "Let us make this commitment meaningful, okay? The mistakes of the past are not shackles, they're weights we lift together." Together, Max echoed, the strength in their promises reverberating as they both knew change had arrived. With hearts aligned and minds open, they sensed a brighter tomorrow unfolding just ahead. Jonah had embarked on a transformative journey, finding fulfillment he had long sought, one that couldn't wait for tomorrow. Now, it was time to embrace the father he envisioned being today and every day to come. You need to subscribe now to keep up with visions of transformation and personal growth. This is the moment to show your support for stories that redefine futures and illuminate the path to healing. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and surround yourself with uplifting narratives. Comment your thoughts about Jonah and Max's journey, and theorize about the challenges they may still face. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need inspiration in their personal transformation. Don't wait even one more second. Embrace the power of storytelling that fuels us all.